Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi. Thank you for coming. So, welcome to our Tech Mind series. I have some questions for you, and I'll start with the first question. The
Sure.
first question is what are the most common misconceptions that students have about data science interviews, and how can they better align their expectations with industry realities?
Sure, sure. There's a couple of things that come to mind when I think about that because I get that question a lot. But I think the top thing that I would tell people, that I hear from the feedback I get from my followers is one, don't get so caught up in the titles of data engineer versus a data scientist versus a data analyst. Those when you get out in the real world, those titles really aren't as siloed as you might think they are. And the reason I say that is because I don't think most people, most students out there realize how small most data science teams are. Most data science teams are really not these big 30, 40 person teams. They're quite small, 4 or 5 people, I would say is about the average. Um, so you might be a data scientist, but you might still be getting your own data. So you're still going to be doing data engineering tasks, or the data engineer will fill in for the data science. So don't get so caught up in, oh, that's a data engineering job. I can't apply for that, or I can't apply for this. Go ahead and apply. The second thing I see a lot is people say, oh, well, this job wants 2 to 3 years of experience, so I better not apply or whatnot. And data science teams, because they're so small, because most of them are still kind of getting off the ground across most industries, they don't always know exactly the person they're looking for, right?
Okay.
You should really just think about yourself as a data professional, and then you're just applying to data oriented jobs. That's kind of the way I look at it, because again, the data science teams may not always be firm in what they're looking for. They might put out a data engineering position, but they could really use help on the modeling side, so more of a data science position. So
Mhm.
it's just, don't get too caught up in those requirements and kind of stick to them so strictly. Go ahead and apply. You never know what's going to come of it.
Yeah, that's a good. I think people, I think especially women, gets very closed off with like the job roles. That's, for example, you need 2 years of experience. Oh, I only have one. I won't apply. So I think
Exactly.
that's nice to hear from other people as well. But do you think that the companies would still talk to people applying with less than the demanded experience?
I think so. I think so. And again, even tying that back to the roles of the position,
Hmm.
because from a hiring manager perspective, finding the good resumes and finding the good candidates is still challenging. So
Yeah.
if I come across a good candidate, we'll find a way to use you, right? We'll find a way to slot you into the team, no matter the role you applied for, or maybe you don't quite have that 3 years of experience. You have the one. If you're good, if you can really stand above the candidate pool, we'll find a way to use you.
Yeah, and they'll also like see if you can adapt and learn on the job, because a lot of things you also learn on the job, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I tell that to a lot of people who contact me. Data science is not a theoretical science; it's an applied science. So it's about how you apply it. So yeah, it's how you are able to take those skills and actually use them on the job. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. My second question to you was, in what ways do you think students are following the crowd when preparing for data science interviews, and how can they stand out as individuals?
Sure, sure. Um, it's funny because I do have a large social media presence, but I don't really follow a lot of the other influencers. I just don't have time for that. But I can always tell when something has gone viral online because I start
Mhm.
getting the same questions over and over in my messages or in my comments. So my number one thing I would tell you is try not to put such an overemphasis on what you hear on social media, or different things you hear about. Oh, well, I got to know a lot of math, or I got to know a lot of leak code, or I got to know this, I got to know that, because it's really much more rumor than it is reality.
Mhm.
The reality is that you can't compete on math and code. right? I mean, if you're following all those social media trends, I mean, they mostly center around that, right? And they mostly center on that because that person's trying to sell you a course or
Mhm.
some shortcut. But to me, that's kind of a losing battle. I mean, where are you going with that? You're going to outmath the world? I mean, did you win the Fields Medal? Did you win the Nobel Prize? I mean, why are you trying to compete on math?
Mhm.
I think that the stronger candidates that I've seen show some personality, show some emotional intelligence, and then they also show how they have applied data science in their own lives, in their own projects.
Okay.
Because really, the question that hiring managers have, no matter what job you're applying for, by the way, is are you ready to go on day one? That's ultimately what I'm trying to find out. That's what the whole interview process is about. Are you ready to go on day one? Or am
Mhm.
I going to have to do a lot of training for you on day one? That's right.
Okay.
So try to show that. Try to show that by demonstrating that you've done your own projects. You've taken that step from I studied data science to now I'm doing data science on my own as somebody who's educated, who has the skills, and I've applied it to my own projects, right? A couple years ago, there was this whole, like a mini movement around the citizen data scientist, right?
Mhm.
Where data is available and you can choose to do your own analytics and modeling on it if you want. So
Yeah.
I like to see somebody who does that, who takes the time to go out and say, "Hey, I'm going to try to apply my skills, right? I learned this in the classroom. Now let
Mhm.
me try to apply this in the best way I can."
Okay. And do you think these people they show this like with a portfolio of projects, or during the interview you would, I don't know, show it, or it's nice to show a portfolio before?
So what I recommend writing articles. Write
Okay.
articles on your findings, right? Present your
Yeah.
problem, present your methodology, and then present your findings. And try to write that article from a business impact perspective, not code, not math, but from a
Okay.
business impact perspective. And
Okay.
after that, you don't have to get fancy with the publishing. Just put it on LinkedIn, put it on X,
Hmm.
and then include that on your resume.
Okay.
And then be ready to speak to that.
Okay. Yeah, because I think it's also important for data science to know how to put everything they coded or their findings into a business perspective, which sometimes
Absolutely.
they don't really know, and that's where they get stuck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. At the end of the day, no, really, not just during the job search or earlier, but throughout your career, as a data scientist, you're going to be measured on your business impact. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters from the end result of all your work and all your models.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And then my third question
Mhm.
is can you share some strategies or tips for students to develop a unique personal brand or approach that will help them succeed in data science interviews?
Sure, sure. So I love the question because it's a very timely question.
Mhm.
On my YouTube channel, Data Science with Dennis, I have recently released a video that talks specifically about data science jobs because I think there's so much misinformation out there right now, and quite frankly, a lot of negativity. So I'm trying to encourage people because I think the jobs are out there, but it is but you have to be prepared as the applicant to be ready to apply in an appropriate way. So in that video, I'm introducing what I refer to as my rule of three.
Mhm.
And my rule of three has two parts to it. First, have your resume reviewed by at least three people who love you enough to be honest with you and tell you whether your resume is good or not,
Okay.
right? So, make sure you have three people that you really trust and who will be honest with you and have them review your resume. The second part of the rule of three is I want you to walk into your next interview with a minimum of three well written articles, like the type I just described, that are on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Have three articles of three studies, three data science studies that you did from end to end. So this
Okay.
isn't Kaggle, this isn't, a school project. These are studies that you did on your own from end to end. You
Okay.
sourced the data, you did your own observations of the data, you came up with your own hypothesis, you developed a model, you got some results, and then you interpreted the results into some sort of business conclusion, right? Have a minimum of 3 of those before you walk into your next interview. I think that that serves as a pretty good measuring stick as far as where you are, not just in your own practice, but where you are compared to the rest of the candidate pool. Because I think those types of things are going to elevate you above where I see the current candidate pool.
Okay.
Now, it's also a good measuring stick for your own skills because maybe you aren't quite where you need to be to come up with 3 studies, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you need to work a little more on your modeling, or maybe you need to work more on your results interpretation. So it's also a good measurement for you because I think that during the application process and really the development side of your data science process, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself and say, you know, yeah, I feel like I'm ready to go as a data scientist on day one, or maybe I'm not ready, right?
Yeah.
Because that's another thing I stress where so many people are focused on, well, I got to have the right keywords to pass the recruiter, and then
Mhm.
I got to do the right study for the interview. Well, yes, but what about day one? What happens if they hire you? You have to be ready to be a data scientist, right? So the
Yeah.
goal is to be ready to be a data scientist with your own studies, not to pass the interview.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think some people might have that problem when the first day of the job. Oh,
Sure.
now what do I do?
Sure, sure. And that can be a real reality check, right?
Yeah.
Because in some of those environments, they're just going to tell you, Okay, okay, data scientist, we hired you. We're giving you a pretty good salary. You've got 2 weeks to show us something,
Yeah.
right? And that's it. So
Yeah.
it's important to prepare for the profession, not the interview.
Yeah, and also like you said before, yes, you're gonna learn in the job, but not everything. Like there are some things you need to have prepared before already. You need to be
Absolutely.
ready to apply, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's no more, and it's not theoretics at that point. You actually have to go on live data and do it.
Yeah, perfect. For me, these are my three questions. I don't know if maybe you want to talk a little bit about your book or there's anything else you want to add.
Overall, as you mentioned, my book, Your First Year in Data Science, it's available on Amazon, and these are the exact types of topics that I mentioned,
Yeah.
where it's not always easy to go from academia to data science as a career, and I try to fill in some of those gaps in there, and to help people kind of develop the additional skills that they're going to need.
Mhm.
So, for example, I also talk about, working with stakeholders. There's kind of an art to working with stakeholders
Yeah.
because ultimately you're serving them, but you're also guiding them. Your stakeholders aren't always going to be sophisticated. Your stakeholders aren't always going to be accepting of data science.
Yeah.
In many cases as data scientists, we break biases, and that can be tough. That's
Yeah.
not something that all people, take kindly to. I also talk about working within a data science team. Data science is much more collaborative than most people realize, as far as talking things back and forth with your other data professionals. That's, you know, being able to express your perspective and then being able to accept other people's perspectives and see it their way, that's also another big part of the process. And then there's also the technical side as far as collecting data. Collecting data in the real world isn't always as easy as it might be in a classroom environment, right? There's very few programs out there, academic programs that can simulate a big data environment or things along those lines.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things there that need to be added on your own, to your own individual data science practice that are going to be critical once you reach the job stage.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that comes to mind is also Um, um, as I mentioned, because of my following, I hear from a lot of people, and there just seems to be so much misinformation out there, so much negativity. So I really just like to encourage people to stay positive, stay encouraged about data science. To me, it's a wonderful profession. It's a profession that I'm really passionate about. So just stay positive. Don't let the negativity bring you down. Job searching is difficult, but if you just takes a couple extra steps, again, you can elevate yourself above where the current candidate pool is to be able to stand out. And if you stand out, if you put in the work, good things are going to come. So I'm just trying to encourage anybody out there studying, or anybody, looking for a job. Maybe you're a mid-career professional. Stay positive. The jobs are out there. Good things will come.
Yeah. I think, like you said before, like the soft skills are very important for data sciences as well. And I think some people
They are.
only look at the technical side, but
Absolutely.
if you have this wholesome approach, I think it will be fine with the job interviews, because it's also a job that there are many openings right now, because a lot of companies are opening data science jobs and
For sure.
teams. So there are a lot of opportunities. So you just
Sure.
need to be prepared, really.
Sure. Yeah, the soft skill side is super important, and I tie that back to the business impact side
Mhm.
because, when you're in the meetings, when you're trying to deliver your results and sell, the stakeholders on your results, I think people ex uh, woefully overestimate how much those stakeholders will pay attention to the technical side, you know,
Yeah.
I always tell people you can't be a math robot, you can't be a code robot
Yeah.
in front of the stakeholders. In many ways, they literally don't care.
Yeah.
I've been sharing this example with my followers, and it's intended partially in joking, but I tell them, when you're up there in front of a managing director, in front of some directors, and you're selling your final result. First of all, you're only going to have about 10 minutes, right? I mean, managing
Mhm.
directors don't have time to listen to a half-hour presentation. And two, they want to hear about the impact, right? So they want to hear, if we follow the data science approach, we can raise your sales by 10% next year. And that's
Yeah.
it. That's all they want to hear about, right?
Yeah.
You could tell them I did it with a neural network, or I did it with a room full of monkeys in the back that I trained how to use iPads. I mean, they literally don't care how you got there. If you were to tell them about the monkeys, they would just tell you, okay, fine, don't let the monkeys die, right? And that's
Mhm.
it. Like they don't care. So
Yeah,
you
you need to translate it to their language, I guess.
right, but their language is business, right? Just
Yeah,
what's the
exactly.
impact? But how you got there, don't even bother presenting it, right? Like
Yeah.
you won't have the time, and they won't care. So it's definitely about developing those soft skills, the awareness of the business, the awareness of your stakeholders,
Yeah.
and what I call, just kind of being able to read the room of your audience and where they're at.
Yeah.
But that's why I get so concerned when I have, students at an academic institution like yours or other places where they put an overemphasis on well, I got to know this math, and I got to know this leak code exercise, and
Mhm.
well, maybe not as much as you think, maybe not as much as you think.
Yeah. Yeah. We also add this to the curriculum, like soft skills and leadership, because I
Great.
think it's very important for them to be job ready when they leave, when they
Absolutely.
graduate. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you guys are doing some unique things around that, because not every curriculum has that.
Yeah.
A lot of curriculums out there are a little in my opinion, a little overemphasized on the math side.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that you're going to be doing most of that with libraries and other pieces of code anyways.
Yeah.
There's too much liability in writing your own math formulas from scratch, right?
Mhm.
So it's good to hear that you're adding that to your curriculum. Extremely important.
Yeah. I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming and talking and giving some tips. I think it's going to be very beneficial to the students and to people applying or maybe trying to upscale their jobs or change
Mhm.
jobs. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And again, I just want to encourage everyone to stay positive and apply yourself as a professional to the business. That this isn't a job. This is a profession. So the more you view it that way, the more good things will come.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you.